You're 50 years old. You worked for 25 years. You've saved when you could. Maybe you have $300,000 in retirement accounts. Maybe $400,000. And everyone tells you you're doing fine. You got 15 years until retirement. They say, plenty of time. Let me tell you something. Those people are either lying or they can't do math. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. If you're 50 with less than $500,000 saved, you're not behind schedule. You're in a financial emergency. Not because you failed, not because you were irresponsible, but because the math of retirement changed while you were busy working and nobody bothered to update you. The people who tell you everything's fine, they're using retirement calculators built in 1994. They're assuming pensions that don't exist anymore. They're pretending Social Security will replace 40% of your income when it'll barely cover 25%. And they're ignoring the one brutal reality that makes your 50s the most dangerous decade of your financial life. The emergency nobody recognizes. This is where people at 50 with $350,000 saved make their catastrophic mistake. They think they're still in the accumulation phase. They think they have time to catch up. They think their 50s are just like their 40s, only with higher salaries and bigger 401k contributions. They're wrong on all counts. Your 50s aren't about accumulation anymore. They're about sequence of returns risk, and most people have never even heard the term. It's about the terrifying reality that a market crash at 52 can cost you more than a crash at 32, even if you lose the same percentage. And it's about the mathematical fact that you now need to save more annually than you earned in your first job just to have a chance at a normal retirement. Let me show you what I mean with actual numbers. You're 50 with $350,000 saved. You want to retire at 65 with enough to generate $50,000 annually, modest, barely comfortable. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, you need $1.25 million by 65. That means you need to add $900,000 to your portfolio in 15 years. Through some combination of contributions and growth, let's say the market gives you 7% average annual returns, historically reasonable, you'd need to contribute about $36,000 per year every year for 15 years straight. $36,000 per year, that's $3,000 per month. After taxes, most people at 50 making $80,000, $100,000 can't save $36,000 annually. Not while paying a mortgage, not while helping kids with college, not while dealing with aging parents, not while living an actual life. Maybe they can save $15,000 to $20,000 if they really push, which means they'll retire with maybe $700,000, $800,000 if the market cooperates. That's $28,000 to $32,000 annually using the 4% rule. Can you live on $28,000 per year? Can you pay for health care before Medicare? Can you handle inflation for 30 years? Can you afford one major expense, a roof replacement, car breakdown, medical emergency, without destroying your withdrawal plan? This is the emergency. Not dramatic, not sudden, just mathematical and inescapable. But here's what terrifies me about people in this situation. They don't panic. They should panic. Controlled panic, rational panic, but panic nonetheless. Instead, they stay calm. They keep doing what they've been doing. They tell themselves 15 years is a long time. They assume something will work out. Nothing will work out. Not without dramatic changes in behavior, expectations, or both. Here's where people at 50 fundamentally misunderstand their situation. They think they have 15 years until retirement. They don't. They have maybe 5 years, maybe 7 if they're lucky. Let me explain why. Your 50s aren't neutral time. They're the highest risk decade of your financial life because of something called sequence of returns risk. It's the mathematical reality that the order of market returns matters more as you approach retirement, and it matters exponentially more in the decade before and after you stop working. Here's what this actually means. Two people, both 50, both with $400,000 saved. They both experience the same market returns over 15 years. Same average, same volatility. Everything identical, except one person experiences a major market crash in year 2 at age 52, and the other experiences it in year 13 at age 63. Same crash, same percentage drop, same everything. But the person who hits the crash at 52 ends up with about 25–30% less wealth at retirement than the person who hits it at 63. Because when you're 52 with $400,000 and the market drops 35%, you lose $140,000. When you're 63 with maybe $900,000. Through contributions and growth, you lose $315,000. You're thinking, but they both recovered the same percentage. You're missing the point. The person at 52 is still contributing. They're buying during the crash and the recovery. They're dollar cost averaging into discounted shares. They have time for those shares to recover and grow. The person at 63 is maybe 1 or 2 years from retirement. They're in preservation mode. They've shifted to safer assets. They don't have time for full recovery because they're about to start withdrawing. Same crash. Radically different outcomes. And you don't know when the crash is coming. This is why your 50s are terrifying if you're under $500,000. You're in the danger zone for sequence of returns risk, but you don't have enough capital for safety measures. You can't shift to bonds because you need growth. You can't stay aggressive because you can't absorb a crash. You're trapped in the exact wrong position at the exact wrong time. Here's the psychological trap that makes this worse. Crashes don't announce themselves. In 2007, if you'd told someone at 52 with $400,000 that they'd experience a 57% market drop over the next 18 months, they might have made different choices. But nobody knows. So they stay 80% stocks, ride the crash down, panic at the bottom, sell half their holdings in early 2009, miss the recovery, rally, and end up permanently behind. I watched this happen to dozens of people. Same story, different names. They weren't stupid. They weren't reckless. They just didn't understand that their 50s aren't about maximizing returns. They're about avoiding catastrophic losses that you don't have time to recover from. The people who tell you that you have 15 years, they're counting years on a calendar. They're not counting financially useful years, because if you hit a crash at 52 and lose 3 years of portfolio growth, you don't have 13 years left. You have 10, and you're already behind. This is what I mean when I say you don't have time. You have some time, maybe enough time if everything goes right. But everything goes right isn't a plan. It's hope, and hope with $350,000 at age 50 is a path to working until 70 or living on $25,000 a year, the math that changes everything. Let me show you the numbers that should terrify you if you're 50 with less than $500,000. Not because they're impossible to overcome, but because most people don't realize how steep the climb is. The standard retirement advice is that you should have 6 to 8 times your annual salary saved by age 50. If you make $80,000, that's $480,000, $640,000. If you're below that, say you have $350,000, everyone says you're behind, but they frame it as catch-upable. Here's what they don't tell you. The rule assumes you'll work until 65. It assumes 7% average market returns. It assumes you'll increase your savings rate every year. It assumes no major financial shocks. It assumes you'll have the discipline to stay invested through crashes. And most critically, it assumes that you're not already exhausted. Let's run the actual math for someone at 50 with $350,000 who wants to retire at 65 with a portfolio that generates $50,000 annually. They need $1.25 million by $65 using 4% withdrawal rate. Starting point, $350,000 target, $125 million gap, $900,000 time, 15 years. If they contribute nothing and just let the $350,000 grow at 7% annually, they'll have about $870,000 at 65. That's $520,000 short of their goal. That shortfall generates only $2,800 annually at 4% withdrawal. They're $2,900 per year short of their target income. So they have to save a lot. If they want to hit $1.25 million, they need to contribute about $36,000 per year for 15 years, assuming 7% growth. That's $3,000 per month. After tax, can someone making $80,000, $5,500 a month after taxes, save $3,000 per month? Not if they have a mortgage, $1,800, car payment, $400, insurance, $300, utilities, $200, food, $600, and basic living expenses, $500. That's $3,800 per month before saving anything. They have $1,700 left. They'd need to save $3,000. The math doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Not without radical changes. But here's where it gets even more brutal. Let's say they can save $20,000 per year instead of $36,000. Still aggressive for most people. After 15 years at 7% growth, with $350,000 starting and $20,000 annual contributions, they'd have about $1.5 million. That's close. That generates $42,000 annually at 4% withdrawal. Livable, barely. But here's what kills people. They run this calculation, feel relieved that they're close, and then reality hits. Reality number one, health care before Medicare. If they retire at 65, they're covered. If they retire at 62, they need private health insurance for 3 years at maybe $15,000 to $20,000 annually. That's $50,000 of their nest egg gone immediately. Reality number two, taxes. That $42,000 annual withdrawal, if it's coming from traditional IRAs or 401ks, it's taxable income. After federal and state taxes, maybe $34,000, $36,000 hits their bank account. Can they live on $36,000? Reality number three, inflation. $42,000 in year one of retirement needs to be $48,000 by year 10 and $55,000 by year 20 just to maintain the same standard of living at 3% inflation. But their portfolio isn't growing at 7% anymore. They're withdrawing from it. They're in a race between portfolio growth and inflation has a head start. Reality 4. Sequence of returns. If they retire in 2008 with $1.05 million and the market drops 40% in year one, they're withdrawing from a declining portfolio. They have $630,000 after the crash, and they need to pull $42,000 for living expenses. They're now at $588,000. When the market recovers, they recover from a lower base. They never catch up. By age 78, they're out of money. This is what I mean by the math that changes everything. People at 50 with $350,000 can run optimistic calculations that show they'll be okay. But those calculations assume perfect conditions. Reality doesn't offer perfect conditions. Reality offers market crashes, health problems, inflation, tax changes, and the psychological stress of watching your portfolio decline while you're withdrawing from it. The people who make it aren't the ones with perfect conditions. They're the ones who understand the math early enough to change the variables. They retire later, spend less, work part-time, or accept a lower standard of living. They don't hope for 7% returns. They plan for 5% and are thrilled if they get 6%. Here's the retirement that awaits someone who hit 65 with $800,000, which is actually better than most people at 50 with $350,000 will achieve. Everyone calls this successful. You saved for decades, you built a portfolio, you made it. Let me show you what this success actually looks like. $800,000 at 4% withdrawal gives you $32,000 annually. After taxes on traditional retirement accounts, maybe $27,000 hits your account. Social Security adds maybe $24,000, assuming average benefits. Total income, $51,000 per year. You're paying $1,200 a month for health care until Medicare at 65. If you retired at 62, that's 3 years of $14,400 annually just for health insurance. Your nest egg is now $757,000 by the time Medicare starts. Your house is paid off. That's the one thing you did right. But property taxes are $4,000 a year. Insurance is $1,500. Maintenance and repairs average $3,000. That's $8,500 annually just to live in a house you own. Food costs $500 a month or $6,000 a year, and that's cooking at home, being frugal, not eating out much. Utilities run $200 a month or $2,400 a year. Car insurance, gas, maintenance, $3,600 a year. You're at $20,500 in basic necessities before you've done anything. No travel, no entertainment, no helping grandkids, no emergencies. Your $51,000 income minus $20,500 in basics leaves $30,500. Sounds okay? Until your car dies at year 3, $8,000. Your roof needs replacement at year 7, $15,000. You need dental work at year 5, $4,000 done. Your spouse needs medication that Medicare doesn't fully cover, $200 a month or $2,400 a year. By age 72, you've had $35,000 in unexpected expenses, and you've spent $2,400 a year extra on medication. Your portfolio needed to be $850,000 at 72 to maintain the same lifestyle, but it's actually $680,000 because you couldn't avoid those expenses and you withdrew more than planned. Now you're 72 with $680,000, still needing $32,000 annually in portfolio withdrawals, increased from the original $32,000 due to inflation, plus medical expenses rising with age. You're withdrawing 4.7% instead of 4%. Your portfolio is shrinking faster than planned. At 78, your portfolio is $480,000. You need to cut spending or you'll run out by 84. So you cut, you stop helping family, you skip vacations, you worry about every expense, you eat cheaper food, you keep the house at 64 degrees in winter. This is the retirement you succeeded into. This isn't failure. This is what success looks like for someone who hit 50 with $350,000 and did everything right after that. They saved $20,000 a year. They stayed invested through crashes. They retired at 65. They didn't make major mistakes, and they still ended up in a position where they're worried about money at 78. This is why I say, if you're 50 with less than $500,000, the situation should terrify you, not paralyze you, terrify you into action. Because the successful outcome I just described, that's the good scenario. That's if everything goes mostly right. The bad scenario, where you can't save $20,000 a year, where you panic sell during a crash, where you retire at 62 instead of 65, where you have serious health problems, that scenario has you broke at 75 and dependent on your kids. And the kids you helped through college, the ones you gave money to for their first house, they're now in their 40s with their own kids and their own financial stress. They love you, but they don't have $2,000 a month to support you. Nobody does. Here's what actually matters for someone at 50 with $400,000. You're going to make 5 decisions over the next 15 years that will determine whether you retire with dignity or work until you're 70. Most people make these decisions unconsciously, emotionally, or based on advice designed for someone else. Let me tell you what these decisions are and why they matter more than your investment returns. Decision number 1, when you actually retire, everyone plans to retire at 65. It's the default answer. But 65 is arbitrary. What matters is your number, not your age. If you're 50 with $400,000 and you save $20,000 a year at 7% growth, you'll have about $1.1 million at 65. That's $44,000 a year at 4% withdrawal. Is that enough? For some people, yes. For most people, no. But if you work until 67, just 2 more years, you'll have about $127 million. That's $50,800 a year. Those 2 extra years also mean 2 fewer years of portfolio withdrawals, so your money lasts longer. And you delay Social Security from 65 to 67, increasing your monthly benefit by about 30%. The math is brutal but clear. Every year you work past 65 is worth 2 to 3 years of financial security in retirement. Work to 67 and you might be comfortable until 87. Retire at 63 and you might be struggling at 78. Most people retire based on emotion. I'm tired, I deserve it, I'm done. I understand. But emotion doesn't pay bills at 75. Math pays bills. And the math says those last few working years are the most financially valuable years of your life. Here's why. At 50 with $400,000, adding 1 more year of work does 3 things. First, you contribute maybe $20,000 more. Second, that $20,000 has 15 years to grow, turning into maybe $55,000 by retirement. Third, your existing $400,000 grows for 1 more year, adding maybe $28,000. Total benefit, about $83,000 from 1 extra year of work. At 64 with $1.05 million, 1 more year of work is worth even more. You contribute $20,000. You don't withdraw $44,000 you would have needed. Your portfolio grows for 1 more year on a bigger base, and you increase Social Security by 8%. Total benefit, over $150,000 in lifetime value. The last 5 working years are worth more than your first 10 working years. Most people don't believe this until they're 68 and broke, wishing they'd worked just 2 more years. Decision number 2, what you're willing to spend in retirement. This is the decision nobody wants to make honestly. They want to maintain their current lifestyle. They want to travel. They want to help kids and grandkids. They want financial security. They want all of it. You can't have all of it with $800,000. Here's the reality. If you're 50 with $400,000, your retirement spending needs to match your portfolio, not your dreams. The 4% rule on $1 million is $40,000 a year. Can you live on $40,000 plus Social Security? That's the actual question. Not, do you want to? Can you? If the answer is no, you have 3 options. Save dramatically more now, work longer, or accept a retirement that looks different than you imagined. Those are the only options. There's no 4th option where somehow $1 million generates $60,000 a year safely. The math doesn't allow it. I watched a couple retire at 65 with $900,000. They wanted to spend $50,000 a year from the portfolio plus Social Security. That's 5.5% withdrawal rate. I told them they'd be broke at 78. They said they'd adjust if needed. At 73, their portfolio was down to $580,000, and they were terrified. They cut spending to $32,000 a year, drastically less than planned. They stopped traveling. They stopped helping their grandkids. They became the financial stress they'd hoped to avoid. If they'd started at $40,000 a year, their portfolio would have been $740,000 at 73. Still declining, but manageable. They'd have had options. Instead, they're cornered. The time to decide what you're willing to spend is now at 50, when you can still adjust your accumulation strategy. If you want to spend $60,000 a year in retirement, you need $1.5 million. If you're 50 with $400,000, that requires saving $45,000 a year for 15 years. Can't do it? Then you can't spend $60,000 a year. The math is the math. Decision number 3, how you handle the next market crash. This is the decision that separates people who retire successfully from people who don't. And it's the one nobody practices until it's too late. You're 52 with $450,000. The market drops 35% in 8 months. Your portfolio is now $293,000. You've lost 7 years of savings in 8 months. Your stomach is in knots. Everyone at work is talking about how they're waiting for things to stabilize before investing more. The news says it could get worse. Your spouse is scared. What do? If you panic and sell moving to safety, you've locked in losses and you'll miss the recovery. Your $293,000 might grow to $400,000 over 5 years instead of back to $450,000 and beyond. If you keep contributing and stay invested, you're buying shares at discounted prices. When the recovery happens, and it will happen, your portfolio recovers faster and higher than it would have otherwise. This is the decision. And most people make it wrong because they're not psychologically prepared. Here's what you need to understand. If you're 50 with $400,000, you will experience at least one major crash, 30% plus decline, before you retire. Statistically certain, the question isn't if, it's when and how you respond. The people who make it through are the ones who decided before the crash what they'd do. They set rules. They automated contributions. They didn't watch their account daily. They understood that crashes are buying opportunities when you're still working and contributing. The people who don't make it are the ones who make decisions based on emotion during the crash. They watch CNBC. They check their account balance every day. They listen to coworkers who are panicking. They sell. Decision number 4, whether you help your adult children financially. This is the most emotionally difficult decision, and it destroys more retirements than market crashes. You're 55 with $600,000 saved. Your 30-year-old daughter needs $30,000 for a down payment. She's your daughter. You love her. You want to help. She'll pay you back. You can afford it. No, you can't. That $30,000 at 7% growth for 10 years until you retire becomes $59,000. The 4% rule says that $59,000 generates $2,360 a year in retirement income. Forever. You just gave away $2,360 a year for the rest of your life. Will your daughter pay you back? Maybe. Probably not. Life happens. She has her own expenses. But even if she does, you lost the growth years. That $30,000 returned at year 5 is worth less than $30,000 invested continuously. I've seen this pattern destroy families. Parent helps kid at 55. Parent retires at 65 with less than planned. Parent struggles financially at 72. Parent needs help from same kid who can't afford it because they're raising children and dealing with their own financial stress. Resentment builds on both sides. Here's the rule. You cannot help your adult children financially if you're 50 plus and under $500,000 in retirement savings. You can't. The math doesn't support it. Love them, but you're barely saving yourself. Helping them drowns you both. The oxygen mask rule. Secure your own first. If you have abundance later, help then. But abundance at 50 with $400,000 is an illusion. Decision number 5, how you invest during your peak earning years. Your 50s are probably your highest earning decade. Maybe you're making $90,000, $120,000, more than you've ever made. And this is where people make a catastrophic mistake. They let their lifestyle inflate to match their income. You get a $15,000 raise at 52. You've earned it. You deserve it. So you upgrade your car. Payment goes from $350 to $550 a month. You go on a nicer vacation, $4,000 instead of $2,000. You move to a slightly larger house. Mortgage increases $300 a month. Before you know it, the entire raise is gone and you're saving the same amount as before. This is financial suicide for someone behind on retirement savings. If you're 50 with $400,000, every raise from 50 to 65 should go directly to retirement savings. Not half of it, all of it. Your lifestyle at 50 is what you can afford. Anything more is borrowing from your 70-year-old self. Let me show you why this matters so much. You're making $80,000 at 50. You get raises totaling $25,000 over the next 10 years. If you save all the raises, plus your existing savings rate, you might add an extra $200,000 to your portfolio by retirement. That's $8,000 a year in retirement income forever. But if you spend the raises and only save what you were saving at 50, you miss that $200,000. You're $8,000 a year poorer in retirement because you wanted a nicer lifestyle in your 50s. Your 50s are for maximizing savings, not maximizing lifestyle. You get one shot at building retirement security. Once you're 65 with $700,000, there's no do-over. You either have enough or you don't. Here's what happens to people at 50 when they realize they're behind. They either panic or they rationalize. Neither response helps. The panic response, they start making desperate moves. They put money in high-risk investments hoping to catch up quickly. They invest in their brother-in-law's business. They buy into a multi-level marketing scheme. They chase crypto or meme stocks or whatever promise of quick returns they find. They lose more money, not less, because desperation leads to bad decisions. The rationalization response, they convince themselves they're not really behind. They'll get an inheritance. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's smaller than they think. They'll downsize their house and live on the proceeds, but they won't. They'll want to stay. Social Security will be fine. It'll be something, but not what they hope. They'll work part-time in retirement until health issues prevent it. They create a fantasy retirement funded by maybes. Neither panic nor rationalization helps. What helps is cold assessment of reality, followed by difficult but realistic adjustments. Here's what I've learned watching people navigate being behind. The ones who succeed emotionally accept three truths that most people fight against. Truth number one, you can't undo the past. Maybe you should have saved more in your 30s. Maybe you shouldn't have bought that boat. Maybe you should have been more aggressive in the 2010s bull market. Doesn't matter now. You can't go back and contribute to 2015's Roth IRA. You can't uninvest in that failed business at 42. The decisions are made. The only question that matters is, what do you do from here? The people who accept this move forward. The people who dwell on past mistakes waste the present. You're 50. You have 15 years to work with. That's substantial time if you use it. It's no time at all if you spend 5 years being angry about decisions you made at 35. Truth number two, your retirement will be different than you imagined. You thought you'd travel 6 months a year. You thought you'd golf 3 times a week at a nice club. You thought you'd have a second home somewhere warm. These were reasonable dreams when you imagined unlimited time to save. You don't have unlimited time. You have what you have. Your retirement will be more modest than planned. That's not tragic. It's reality. Modest retirement beats no retirement. And retirement on $45,000 a year can be genuinely good if you adjust expectations. The people who can't accept this stay miserable. They retire with $800,000, need to live on $40,000 a year, but spend $55,000 trying to maintain the retirement they imagined. At 73, they're broke and bitter. The people who accept reality at 50 adjust their vision. They find less expensive ways to be happy. They discover that retirement isn't about money. It's about time and autonomy. Even modest retirement beats working at 72. Truth 3. The rules apply to you. But I'm healthy. I'll work until 70 if needed. Until you're not. Health issues, layoffs, caregiving responsibilities, these derail plans constantly. You might work until 70. You might not have the choice. But the market returns 10% long-term. Long-term isn't your time frame. You need the next 15 years to cooperate. They might not. But I'll spend less in retirement. Most people don't. Healthcare, leisure, inflation, costs find you. The rules of retirement math aren't suggestions. They're physics. You can't violate them through optimism. The 4% withdrawal rule isn't a guideline. It's a mathematical reality based on historical portfolio survival rates. Withdraw 6%, and you have a 50-50 chance of running out of money. Those are the odds. The people at 50 who succeed are the ones who accept that rules apply to them, then work within the rules. They don't need exceptional returns. They need to avoid catastrophic mistakes and let mathematics compound in their favor. What actually works from here? So you're 50 with $400,000. You understand the problem. You accept the math. Now what? Here's the framework that actually works. Not theory, not hope, but actions that change outcomes. Years 50-55, maximum accumulation. These 5 years are your final sprint. Every raise goes to retirement. Every bonus goes to retirement. You maximize 401k contributions, $30,000 plus if you include catch-up contributions after 50. You cut expenses anywhere possible. You live like you're broke because, relative to your needs, you are. Target. Add $100,000, $150,000 to your portfolio through contributions alone. Your $400,000 becomes $650,000, $750,000 through contributions plus growth by age 55. Years 55 to 60, sequence risk protection. You can't stay 90% stocks anymore. One crash could destroy you, but you can't go too conservative either. You need growth. This is the tightrope. You shift to 70% stocks, 30% bonds. You create a buffer. 2 years of living expenses in cash or short-term bonds that you won't touch unless markets crash. This buffer allows you to not sell stocks at the bottom if you have to retire during a downturn. Target. Grow portfolio to $900,000 to $1 million while implementing sequence risk protection. Years 60-65. The final push. If you made it this far without a major crash, you're positioned to succeed. Your focus shifts from accumulation to preservation. You're still working, still contributing, but you're thinking about retirement distribution strategy. You work with a tax professional, not a financial advisor selling products, a CPA who understands withdrawal strategies. You figure out whether Roth conversions make sense. You plan your Social Security strategy. You calculate the exact date when you can retire safely. Target. Retire at 65, 67 with 1.1, 1.3 million and a clear distribution plan. This isn't exciting. It's not sexy. It requires sacrifice now for security later. But it's the only path that works for someone at 50 with $400,000 who wants to retire with dignity. The alternative? Hope the market goes up 15% annually. Hope you don't get laid off. Hope healthcare costs don't spike. Hope inflation stays low. Hope, hope, hope. Hope isn't a strategy. Math is a strategy. And the math says that if you're 50 with less than $500,000, you need to change everything starting today. You're 50 with $400,000. You spent 25 years building this. You did many things right. You contributed when you could. You stayed employed. You built something. That deserves recognition. But recognition doesn't pay bills at 75. And the uncomfortable truth is this. You're in a race between mathematics and reality, and mathematics is winning. Most people in your position will end up in one of three places. Place number 1, they'll work until 70, retire with $900,000, below $1 million, live modestly on $40,000 to $45,000 a year plus Social Security, and make it work. Not luxurious, but secure. This is success given your starting point. Place number 2, they'll retire at 65 with $700,000, $800,000. Try to maintain their pre-retirement lifestyle, and by age 73 realize they're in trouble. They'll cut spending dramatically, stress constantly about money, and make it to 85 before running out. This is failure disguised as retirement. Place number 3, they'll panic, make high-risk investments trying to catch up, lose money, and end up at 65 with less than they have now. They'll work until 70 plus, not by choice, but by necessity. This is catastrophic failure. The difference between these outcomes isn't luck. It's not market returns. Everyone in all three scenarios experiences the same markets. The difference is behavior. The people in place number 1 make hard decisions at 50. They save aggressively. They work longer. They adjust expectations. They accept reality and work within it. The people in place number 2 and number 3 don't make the hard decisions. They hope things work out. They maintain lifestyle instead of building security. They make emotional decisions during market volatility. They choose comfort now over security later. Here's the principle. At 50 with less than $500,000, you're not saving for retirement anymore. You're saving yourself from financial disaster. That sounds dramatic, but it's mathematically accurate. The baseline retirement most people want requires $1.2, $1.5 million. You're 35% of the way there with 65% of your working years behind you. That's not judgment. That's arithmetic. Wealth after 50 doesn't belong to the people with perfect careers or great timing. It belongs to the people who see reality clearly, make uncomfortable changes, and let compounding work for 15 years without interruption. Your 50s are not like your 40s. Every decision carries more weight. Every mistake costs more. Every year wasted can't be recovered. But here's what gives me hope. 15 years is enough time if you use it correctly. Enough time to build from $400,000 to $1 million. Enough time to implement tax strategies. Enough time to create genuine retirement security. The people who succeed don't have perfect circumstances. They have clear vision and relentless discipline. They know at 50 that their lifestyle today determines their lifestyle at 75. They make the trade. They live modestly now to live securely later. The people who fail keep pretending they have more time than they do. They spend as if they're 35. They save as if they're 40. They invest as if they're 25. And they retire. Broke at 70, wondering what happened. So here's what happens next. You finish this video and you make a choice. Most people make the comfortable choice. They keep doing what they've been doing. They save a little. They hope for the best. They tell themselves 15 years is plenty of time. In 15 years, they're 65 with $750,000, realizing too late that comfortable choices create uncomfortable retirements. A small group makes the difficult choice. They face the math today. They cut spending dramatically. They maximize every dollar of savings. They stay invested through the fear. They work 2 years longer than planned. They accept that their retirement looks different than they imagined. In 15 years, they're 65. With $1.2 million, they retire with security instead of anxiety. Not because they were lucky, because they were disciplined when it mattered most. The difference between these groups isn't intelligence or income. It's the willingness to accept reality and act accordingly. At 50, reality is this: you're behind, significantly behind, and catching up requires sacrifice that most people won't make. but you're not most people. You watched this video to the end. That means something. Most people would have clicked away when the math got uncomfortable. You stayed. You're still here. That tells me you might be one of the few who actually changes, who faces the terrifying reality and decides to do something about it. Here's what that looks like. Tomorrow morning, you calculate exactly where you stand, not where you hope you stand, where you actually stand. You add up every retirement account. You calculate what you need, you see the gap clearly, then you build a plan, not a fantasy plan with 12% returns and no market crashes. A realistic plan that assumes 7% returns includes at least one major market correction and requires maximum contributions for 15 years straight. Then you execute. You cut spending today. You automate contributions. You stay invested when markets crash. You work until 67, even when you're tired. You make the hard choices that your future self will thank you for. This is how you go from terrified at 50 to secure at 70. Not through magic or luck, through mathematics and discipline applied relentlessly for 15 years. Your 50s determine your 80s. The decisions you make this year determine whether you're comfortable at 75 or desperate at 78. The math you face today doesn't care about your feelings, but your future absolutely depends on whether you face it. You're 50 with less than $500,000. This should terrify you. But terror without action is just anxiety. Terror that drives change, that's the beginning of security. The clock is running. You have 15 years. Maybe less if markets don't cooperate. Maybe more if you work longer. But the window is finite and closing. Use it. Now, if you want more brutal honesty about building wealth, more logic, less emotion, more math, less motivation, subscribe to this channel. We're not here to make you feel good. We're here to tell you what actually works, but only if you can handle the truth.